Hello everyone, I am Premjit Kumar Bhati, PGT Economics, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Firozpur, Punjab. We are going to discuss about the third unit of macroeconomics, that is determination of income and employment. And as you all know that this unit is asked for 12 marks in the board examination. So this is a big unit, but we will try to finish it on time. And let us start with the first topic in this unit, that is aggregate demand. So as we had studied in microeconomics, the two types of demand, those are in individual demand and market demand. So individual demand is demand by one consumer for one commodity. Market demand is demand by all consumers for one commodity. And here we have aggregate demand, so it means demand by all for all commodities. Okay, so demand also we say that it is from our expenditures. So whatever is our expenditure, if we will sum that expenditure, we will get aggregate demand, as it is written in the slide, you can see. So aggregate demand represents the total expenditure on goods and services in an economy during a period of time. When we talk about the components of aggregate demand, these are the four sectors of the economy, like household consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, government consumption expenditure, and net export. It comes from ROW, rest of the world. In two-sector economy, we have aggregate demand is equal to C plus I. C stands for consumption and I stands for investment. So our demand basically is for two purposes. Those are consumption and investment. Aggregate supply is identical to national income according to J.M. Keynes. He said that whatever we will produce, if we will add that value, we will get national income. So it is well identical to national income, and AS is equal to C plus S. Means our income goes in consumption and savings. Now we'll talk about consumption function. So consumption function is basically propensity to consume, and we know the means what is the tendency of people with the change in the income. So it shows functional relation between income and consumption, as it is seen in the equation. Also we see C is the function of Y, means our consumption depends on income. And when we talk about the consumption equation or consumption function, it is C is equal to C plus MPC into Y, where C stands for autonomous consumption. We know very well about autonomous consumption is consumption at zero level of income, and MPC is marginal propensity to consume into income, national income, that is. So propensity to consume is of two types. It is first is average propensity to consume, and the second one is marginal propensity to consume. Let us talk about the two one by one. First we'll talk about average propensity to consume, and it refers to ratio of consumption expenditure to the corresponding level of income, and means it is C upon Y, means ratio between consumption and income. Important points about APC are as follows. Like first important point about APC is more than 1 as long as consumption is more than national income. It means before the break-even point, APC is equal to 1. Break-even point is where when our savings become 0, means consumption is equal to income, means our whole income goes into consumption. Second point is APC is equal to 1, means at break-even point consumption is equal to national income. So there we can say that is the break-even point. And the third point is APC is less than 1, means beyond the break-even point consumption is less than national income, means a level comes when consumption lags behind the income, means people start saving. Fourth point is APC falls with increase in income. This is very important point, children, that when our income increases, so APC keeps on falling. You have to keep it a point. Fifth point about APC is APC can never be zero. because even at zero level of national income we have to consume, we have to spend on consumption. So this is again very important point of about APC. Now we'll talk about the second type of propensity to consume, that is marginal propensity to consume, MPC. So children, MPC refers to the ratio of change in consumption expenditure to change in income. Means it comes change with the change. Okay, the formula of MPC will be change in consumption upon change in income. Now let us talk about the important points about MPC. A value of MPC varies between 0 to 1, but if the entire national income is consumed, then delta C is equal to delta Y, making MPC is equal to 1. Means at break-even point, MPC will be 1. However, if entire additional income is saved, then delta C will be 0. So MPC will be 0. Means at that point, the additional income goes in the savings. Now we'll talk about saving function. It comes from propensity to save, and saving function, again, it refers to functional relation between saving and national income. Like saving depends on income, and saving function is S is equal to minus C. Why? Because it is autonomous consumption at zero level of income plus MPS into Y. It's very easy for you to understand. Saving function is also of two types, children. Like first one is average propensity to consume, APS, and the second is marginal propensity to save, MPS. So APS is average propensity to save. Average propensity to save refers to ratio of saving to the corresponding level of income. APS is equal to S upon Y. Okay, now it becomes easy for you to understand because we have already discussed about APC. So APS is S upon Y, APC was SC upon Y, and APS is S upon Y. The important points about APS will be just opposite to the APC. Like first point is APS can never be 1 or more than 1, as saving can never be equal to more than income. Okay. Second point is APS can be 0. At break-even point we know APS can be 0. APS can be 0 and negative also. The important question asks many times that which above the following can be negative or 0. So you have to remember that APS can be 0 or negative. And next or last point about APS is APS rises with increase in income. We know APC decreases, so APS increases. Now next is marginal propensity to save. It is like propensity to save refers to ratio of change in saving to change in income, and formula is MPS is equal to delta S upon delta Y. Delta stands for change. Okay. Important points about MPS are like MPS varies between 0 to 1, but if entire additional income is saved, in such case delta S becomes is equal to delta Y, then MPS will be 1. If the additional entire income is consumed, in a case delta S is equal to 0 and MPS will be 0. Okay, so MPS can be 0. Understand it? Now a relationship between APC and APS, and the sum total of APC plus APS is equal to 1. Means because income is either used for consumption or for saving. We have already discussed about it. Now relationship between MPC and MPS, it is also same, like the sum of MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. We can say 1 is equal to MPC plus MPS, MPC is equal to 1 minus MPS, or MPS is equal to 1 minus MPC. Okay. Now capital formation is also known as investment. So what is investment? The meaning is simple. It refers to increase the stock of capital goods during a financial year. Children, in our economics we have two types of investment. First one is induced investment and the second one is autonomous investment. Induced investment refers to the investment which depends on profit expectations and is directly influenced by income level. Okay, like induced is influenced by income, and autonomous investment refers to investment which is not affected by changes in level of income, and it's not induced solely by profit motive. It is income inelastic. Understand it. The question might be asked that which one about from the following is income inelastic. So you have to remember that autonomous investment is income inelastic. It means it doesn't depend on the level of income. Children, mostly individual investment is done by the private investors, and the autonomous investment is generally done by the government, because it doesn't depend on the income level. Government always want to encourage social welfare. Clear? Now we'll talk about equilibrium level of income is determined only at a point where A is equal to AS or S is equal to 1. So there are basically two approaches to determine the equilibrium level of income, output and employment. Those are ADAS approach and SI approach. ADAS approach is deleted from our syllabus, so we'll talk about S is equal to I's level. Means according to SI approach, the equilibrium will be at the point where savings are is equal to investment. Simple. No need to think here and there. Simply remember, the economy will be in equilibrium when savings are equal to investment according to J.M. Keynes. Okay, so it is we'll talk about that it is not always that savings are always equal to investment, so it can be here and there. So when income, like savings are more than investment, what happens when savings are less than investment? So the variations happen in the equilibrium, and according to JM Keynes, these are automatically corrected by the market forces. Okay, now full employment is also a concept where, like, what is full employment? Full employment is a situation when all those who are able and willing to work at prevailing wage rate get the opportunity to work. So this is the concept of full employment. When we talk about the types of unemployment, there are basically 2-3 types, like voluntary unemployment. You can read it out, the meaning. Involuntary unemployment, it's like very simple for you to read out and understand it. The next concept in our topic is investment multiplier. Basically, investment multiplier is the ratio of change in income due to change in investment. Means K stands for multiplier, and it is equal to delta Y upon delta I. As I told, delta stands for change. Value of investment multiplier lies between 1 to infinity, children. Remember it. This type of questions are asked. What is the minimum and maximum value of investment multiplier? So you have to remember it. Working a multiplier, like, children, we know very well that the MPC, more the MPC, more will be the multiplier, and more the multiplier, more will be the impact on investments on national income. Okay, so this works like this. Investment, like delta I, like change in investment will change the income. With change in income, consumption will change, and consumption by 1 will be the income for others. So because of that, again income will change, and income will change, that will change the consumption. So the detailed things are like in notes, you can read it out. As I was telling that multiplier depends on MPC and MPS, like there is direct relationship between multiplier and MPC. If MPC is high, K will also be high, but if MPC is low, K will also be small. In short, we can say higher the value of MPC, higher will be the value of multiplier. Lower the value of MPC, lower will be the value of multiplier. Okay, when we talk about multiplier and MPS, there is inverse relationship between multiplier and MPS. You can read it out. It's just opposite to that of MPC. Now the most important topics in this unit are excess demand and deficient demand, and we'll talk about the two one by one. First one is MPS, excess demand, or it is also known as inflationary gap. So what are these two? Excess demand refers to a situation when aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, corresponding to full employment. Children, we are reading the theory of J.M. Keynes. Remember it. And on the other hand, inflationary gap is the gap by which actual aggregate demand exceeds the level of aggregate demand required to establish full employment. It measures the amount of excess of aggregate demand. Okay, as we can see in the diagram, the required aggregate demand should be at point A, but it's still B, point B. So the gap between A and B is called as inflationary gap, and the excess demand is also like we require only AD0, but demand is 81. So that much we demand is excess in the economy. What are the reasons of or causes of excess demand, children? The main reason for excess demand are apparently the increase in the following components of aggregate demand. So we know the components of aggregate demand. Yeah, first one is increase in household consumption demand due to rise in propensity to consume. Second one is increase in private investment demand because of rise in credit facilities. Third one, increase in public or government expenditure. Next one, increase in export demand, increase in money supply, or increase in disposable income are the reasons or causes for excess demand. Now, what will be the impact or effects of excess demand on price, output, and employment? First impact will be on general price level. Excess demand gives a rise to general price level because it arises when aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply. At the full employment level, there is inflation in economy showing inflationary gap. Inflationary gap is nothing but inflation, okay? Rise in prices. B point is effect on output, like excess demand has no effect on the level of output. Economy is at full employment level and there is no idle capacity in the economy, hence output cannot be increased. Okay, remember it. Third point is effect on employment. There will be no change in the level of employment also. Already economy is working on full employment, so there is no capacity in the economy. Next one is the economy is already operating at full employment. We have talked about this, we have discussed. So next is how can we correct or control the excess demand? Children, there are basically two policies, monetary policy and fiscal policy. So let us talk first about monetary policy. And children, monetary policy is the policy of central bank of a country to control money supply and availability of credit in the economy. The central bank can take the following steps. The central bank has two tools to control the availability of credit in the economy. Those are quantitative instruments and the second one is qualitative instrument. Okay, so quantitative instruments include bank rate, repo rate, reverse repo rate, or open market operations, CRR, SLR, etc. So in case of excess demand, increase in bank rate, increase in repo rate, increase in reverse repo rate, sale of securities in open market, increase in CRR. Okay, we have already discussed about these in the money and banking part, so you understand it better. Like in this case, in the case of excess demand, the central bank has to reduce the purchasing power of people so that they can demand less. Qualitative may we have imposing margin requirement on secured loans, moral suasion, and introduce credit rationing, etc. Now we have the next one, that is deficient demand, or it is also known as deflationary gap. Children, it is very important for us to understand it because in excess demand, the demand is in excess, that's not a problem, but the problem comes like when demand is less, and in this situation there will be the two equilibriums in the economy. One will be at full employment and the other one will be underemployment equilibrium. It happens mostly in the developing countries like India, like equilibrium strikes before the full employment, and in that case, many resources lies unutilized. So deficient demand or deflationary gap when in an economy aggregate demand falls short of aggregate supply at full employment level, the demand is said to be deficient demand. And when we talk about deflationary gap, it's very clear from the diagram, children. You can see demand is required till B point, that's full employment equilibrium, but the demand is till A point, and the equilibrium strikes at 2 points. Like first it strikes at E point. E shows underemployment equilibrium, children. Remember it. The question comes like this: can the economy achieve employment before reaching the full employment? Your answer will be yes. And what do we call it? J.M. Keynes also called it underemployment equilibrium. So children, remember it. Underemployment equilibrium comes in case of deficient demand or deflationary gap. Okay, the diagram you can write it out and you can understand better. Next thing, reasons or causes for deficient demand. These causes are just opposite to the causes of excess demand. Okay, again the four components of aggregate demand are responsible for deficient demand. Those are decrease in household consumption demand due to fall in propensity to consume, decrease in private investment demand because of fall in credit facilities, decrease in public or government expenditure, decrease in export demand, and decrease in money supply or decrease in disposable income. Now, what will be the impact or effects of deficient demand? We discuss effect on general price level. Children, deficient demand causes the general price level to be fall because it arises when aggregate demand is less than aggregate supply. So it is also known as deflation. Okay. Effect on equilibrium or employment, children, it's very important. And in case of excess demand, we discussed that no impact on employment or output or income. But in case of deficient demand, due to deficient demand, investment level is reduced, which causes involuntary unemployment. Remember it. Which type of unemployment occurs because of deficient demand? So you have to write out involuntary unemployment. Okay. Effect on the output. What will be the effect? Low level of investment and employment implies low level of output. Now again, measures to control the deficient demand. Again, the two policies are there: fiscal policy and monetary policy. So monetary policy is taken care by the central bank, and it has two tools: quantitative tools and qualitative tools. So in case of deficient demand, bank rate will be decreased, repo rate decrease, reverse repo rate decrease, purchase of securities in open market operations decrease in CRR. When we talk about qualitative instruments, RBI will impose or decrease margin requirement, moral suasion will be there, and reduce in credit rationing. So fiscal policy में what happens? Like fiscal policy में revenue policy, decrease taxes, governments will impose less taxes on people so that their purchasing power will be increased. Increase in expenditure like welfare programs, developmental programs, or unplanned expenditure will increase by the government so that people will have more disposable income with them to demand. Next is decrease in public borrowing or public debt. Like government can borrow from public, so government should decrease it, because if government will borrow less from people, people will get more income to spend on consumption or investment, so demand will increase. So children or everyone watching, thanks a lot spending your time. Hope you must have liked it. Thank you. Have a good time ahead.